in Nazareth. When Jesus came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. And he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." All spoke well of him and were amazed at the gracious words that came from his mouth. They said, "Is this not Joseph's son?" He said to them, "Doubtless you will quote to me this proverb, 'Doctor, cure yourself.' And you will say, 'Do here also in your hometown the things that we have heard you did at Capernaum.'" And he said, "Truly I tell you, no prophet is accepted in the prophet's hometown. But the truth is, there were many widows in Israel in the time of Elijah, when the heavens was shut up 3 years and 6 months, and there was a severe famine over all the land. Yet Elijah was sent to none of them except to a widow in Zarephath in Sidon. There were also many lepers in Israel in the time of the prophet Elisha, and none of them was cleansed except Naaman the Syrian." When they heard this, all in the synagogue were filled with rage. They got up, drove him out of the town, and led him up to the brow of the hill on which their town was built, so that they might hurl him off the cliff. But he passed through the midst of them and went on his way. This is the good news of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
O gracious and loving God, may these words of my mouth and this meditation from my heart be filled with your Spirit, filled with your truth, and may it be heard with an open ears and open hearts and open minds, and bring us a message that we need to hear for our lives today, for our world today, for our church today, and for your eternal kingdom. Well, in the pantheon of cartoon characters, there's probably no one greater or more beloved or better remembered than Bugs Bunny. He's that wisecracking rabbit who always welcomes you into his world with a crisp bite of a carrot and a ridiculously droll, "What's up, Doc?" He'll greet you that way, whether he's sunning himself on the Riviera or he's facing the front of a shotgun of Elmer Fudd. He's never bothered, he's just always happy, and he's always pretty funny. You can't help but laugh at him. Well, partly because he's a rabbit, and rabbits are the gentlest of creatures and probably the least likely to have a personality at all. And Bugs Bunny is all personality, and he always has some witty way of getting away from the hunters that are chasing him. And he's so unflappingly casual and confident about what he does. He is kind of the neighborhood mayor, you know. And in one of the most, in a typical Bugs Bunny cartoon, perhaps you've seen this one or you know what this is like, Bugs finds himself coming out of his rabbit hole, and there's Elmer Fudd with his shotgun, and he's ready to give it to Bugs, and he says, "It is rabbit season." And Bugs is biting on his carrot, and without skipping a beat, he goes, "No, it's not. It's duck hunting season." And Daffy Duck, who's on the tree hiding behind it, hoping that Elmer will finally do the rabbit in, runs out and he goes, "It is not duck hunting season. It's rabbit hunting season."
And Bugs goes, nope, duck hunting season. Rabbit hunting season. Duck hunting season. Rabbit hunting season. Rabbit hunting season. Duck hunting season. Rabbit hunting season. It is duck hunting season, so shoot. So Elmer shoots the duck. And of course, in cartoon violence, it's always just ridiculous. So Donald's beak spins around a few times, and then when he comes through, he realizes he's been had, and boy, is he mad. So he wants to chase after the rabbit, but Bugs is already on his way, and in the cartoon, you know, it's like a slide whistle makes the noise, woo! And there's a little smoke that pops up, and we don't know where Bugs is, but Elmer and Daffy are trying to find him, and then we see Bugs, so he's back behind that tree, just drolly eating his carrot, you know, saying, what's up next, Doc? Or my favorite line of his, what a maroon. It's always my favorite. You know, we love to watch Bugs Bunny outsmart all the people that are out to get him. And not only do we love to see how he finally escaped oppression, but we love to see how he makes the people who are trying to oppress him look like utter fools. And that's just a delight that we have in watching those cartoons. And as I was looking at the story in our scripture today, it struck me in many ways as a bit of a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Now let me explain. I find this story from Jesus' life to be a very funny one, and to be in kind of a cartoonish energy. It starts out with Jesus coming to Nazareth to preach and to share his thoughts on Torah for the first time. And what I forgot to say before I read the scripture today is that just before this scripture, we're told that Jesus has been in Capernaum, which is next door to Nazareth, and there he's been performing all sorts of miracles and preaching, and everybody is just wowed by him. And so he's got incredible street cred as he comes to Nazareth. And the people there, you can bet, are very excited that Jesus is coming to preach and to bring miracles to them. And they're going to be extra special ones because, of course, Nazareth is his hometown. These are his folks. So they're promised some extra special, maybe like Oprah, a car for everyone, or a miracle of your choice for everybody. And it could not be better when Jesus comes and he's given the scroll to read what the lectionary of that day is in his temple. You know, we have lectionary texts. And it so happens that the lectionary text for that day comes from the prophet Isaiah. And it's where the prophet Isaiah is talking about what the Messiah will say when he finally comes to turn the world back right side up. He's going to say, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me to bring comfort and to bring good news to the poor, to bring release to the oppressed, to bring sight to the blind, which was a metaphor for saying that the Messiah would turn God's people into a light for the nations. So this would be a very highly esteemed place that God's people would have with the Messiah. I mean, this could not be better news for all the people that are sitting here. I mean, it's like it's rabbit season, right? And Jesus, with just turning on a dime, pulls the rug right out from under them and says, "No, it's not. It's duck hunting season." In other words, I mean, he starts to say after he says, "Yes, all of this sort of thing is coming through me." He then says, "But we all know that there's one place a prophet is never understood or accepted, and that's in his hometown." And this would have been a proverb that the people were familiar with. And we probably know that experience, that creative, brilliant people, artists, I think especially, are probably least understood and appreciated by the artist family and maybe the art patrons of that time. It's all the people outside of that little circle that end up appreciating and understanding how great the artist is. And Jesus is saying, I'm like that. You know, I'm the prophet that is not going to be accepted by you. And then he goes on to tell a couple of stories from the Hebrew texts. Stories about two of the most beloved heroes of the Hebrew Bible. One, a story about Elijah, who was God's prophet during a famine. God had sealed the heavens according to the story, because the people were worshiping Baal. And God sent Elijah not to get sustenance and help from somebody from the Israelites, but he sent him to go to a Phoenician city far away from where the chosen people lived. And it was there that God provided Elijah and this widow that he was living with and the widow's son plenty of food. Elijah was able to do some healing miracles. It all happened way beyond what was the boundaries of the chosen people. Then Jesus goes into a story about Elisha, who was Elijah's successor. And Elisha is also a prophet and a healer, and there's lots of people struggling with leprosy in Israel, but Elisha is sent to a general of the Syrian army to cure his leprosy instead of taking his energies and curing the Israelites. Now, those stories were in the text to help us understand that God's power transcends what is just within the Israelite community. But in the context of what Jesus is talking about, in the context of this text, what Jesus is saying is, yes, in me, the poor will receive good news, the blind will receive sight and be given honor, the oppressed will be given freedom and release, but all those gifts are not for you. They're for the people that are out there, the Gentiles, the people that you normally despise, the people that you say are not holy, the people that look different from you, the people that worship God differently than you, the people that are other. And the Israelites, they don't like hearing that. They don't like hearing that it's not rabbit season. And even though they can't deny it, because these are stories in their text, they're very angry that Jesus has decided to lift up this angle of what the Messiah does and who God is. And so they just want to do Jesus in. And it's kind of comical because 5 minutes before, he was just the greatest thing since sliced bread, and now they just want to run him off a cliff. You know, it's kind of the way that comedy happens. It happens in a really fast way. So suddenly now they're up at the top of the cliff, and they're trying to throw him over, and he skips out of town. If this were a cartoon, you can imagine there'd be a little slide whistle, a little puff of smoke, and they can't find him anywhere. And now they're still just probably fighting one another, and maybe a few of them are falling off the cliff or hanging on to dear life so they don't fall off. And Jesus is, well, maybe he's behind a rock somewhere watching all this going on, munching on a falafel or something and saying, what a bunch of maroons. You know, what's next, Dad? You know, you can just imagine Jesus having a little chuckle at how ridiculous these people have suddenly started acting. And it's almost as if Jesus came into this situation to show up how ridiculous the people can be. So that when we read the story, we will say to ourselves, oh, I hope I'm never like one of those people that was in that synagogue in Capernaum, and that I don't understand what Jesus' purpose is, and that I don't start looking like a fool just like they did. Of course, I know that Jesus is, yes, here for me and here for my salvation, but the most important person that Jesus is for the person that's left out, the person beyond the walls, the person that's the outsider, the person that's the other. And if I want to be a follower of Jesus, then I will commit my life to bringing Jesus, bringing that love, bringing that care, bringing that openness to people that are beyond the walls. That's pretty clear. I will be noble when I go out and do that. But the problem often is, I find, in myself and for many church folks, when we go out to go beyond the walls, to bring that good news to people that are different from us, we're still kind of doing it expecting that they're going to like the very same things that we do. And so what we're doing is expecting them to like the stuff that we do. And that may not make any sense because they are not like us. One of the most telling chapters in this type of behavior of recent is the idea of doing contemporary worship. And many churches for the last 20 years have thought, we need more young people in the church, young people need Jesus, we want to reach out and help them, we want to make our church available for them, so we're going to do contemporary worship. And usually it's a couple of folks from the congregation who may have a little gray hair but play guitar and, play the piano. But they're well-intentioned. They really want to help. And we're singing songs out of The Faith We Sing, which is our contemporary hymnal. Songs that are written in at most the 1970s. And for us, that's contemporary worship because we're used to hymns, and for us, this is like the updated stuff. But the people that we're trying to bring in, music from the 70s isn't even on the oldies stations anymore. We're singing along, we think this is really great, and to the people that are coming, that we think are going to be here to really speak the language that we speak or that they speak, we kind of look a little bit like maroons. We don't mean to. We're all the best of intentions, but we just don't know. Because we've been operating out of the idea that, kind of like what I was talking about last week, out of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The idea being that that's a great golden rule of life, but there's also some problems with that, because oftentimes we do unto other people in a way that feels comfortable and makes sense to us, but it may not make sense to the other person. So we ask ourselves, if we are to effectively go out and reach people that are beyond the walls, people that have great needs, the people that need Christ, the people that we truly want to reach, how do we do that in a way that will make sense to them, not just make sense to us? Yes, we're to go out and love other people. But I think about that line from The Wizard of Oz, where the wizard says to the Tin Man, a heart is not judged by how much you love, but by how much you are loved by others. How can we reach out to people that are not like us and engage them in such a way that they truly appreciate and love us as much as we want to love them? What makes sense to me, and what I'm thinking about, is what I talked about a little bit last week, the platinum rule. The rule that says, serve others, treat others in the way they would like to be treated. Take yourself out of the equation, but just start thinking about what would make sense to the person that you want to reach. And how do you do that? Well, sometimes you're really lucky. One of my favorite stories about church, and I've shared this with some of you at meetings and this and that, is a story about an aging church in a community that had become a different kind of community than what it was in the 50s when this church was first established. This church was now primarily young Hispanic families. The congregation were old Anglo people, didn't speak much Spanish. It was very different from the world outside of them. But they knew that it's the people out there that Jesus was called to bring good news to, and that's who we're called to bring good news to. How in the world are we going to do that? Well, one day, one of the gentlemen was walking down the street. He was at the stoplight, and there was a little boy from the neighborhood. And the gentleman asked the little boy, how you doing? He said, oh, I'm great. Today's my birthday. It's your birthday. That's happy birthday. And I bet you're going to have a fun party. No, our family can't really afford to have parties. You can't. Well, a light bulb went off in his head. Our congregation loves to have parties. Maybe we can be the people that can bring birthday parties to the kids in this community. So they went knocking on doors, introduced themselves, and said, we would like to give a birthday party for your children, let us know. And that's what they did. That was the submission. They loved doing it. It was something that had great meaning and great need and great delight and great love for the people out there. And then what happened was they started finding every once in a while their abandoned basketball court on their church property was now being used by some of the kids in the neighborhood, because they knew now these people are family. And they made this connection that was so comfortable and so meaningful that these families started coming to the church as a result. That they were starting to love the people in the church as much as the people in the church loved them, because they were able to treat and serve the people out there in a way that had great meaning and was a way that they needed and wanted and were so grateful for service. We're not always that lucky. But what we can do is ask some questions. We can commit ourselves to being a people that are curious about the others that live out there. In fact, I got a little training on how to go out and get to know your community, and it's really quite easy. And I want to share this process with you now, and we'll be talking about this more too as we move into the future and look into different ways that we want to be more engaged and more bringing Christ in more ways and more powerful ways out in the community than we already are, which is already great. But there are 4 questions that we should ask whoever we want to know, whatever community we want to learn about. 1, tell us a little bit about the hopes and dreams that you have, that your community has. Let's learn about what their hopes and dreams are. 2nd, tell us a little bit about your fears and your struggles, and your community's fears and struggles. We may assume we know what they are, but we'll only find out when we ask the people who are involved, who are going through them. 3rd, how might our church help? Listen to their ideas of what might work. There might be something you didn't even imagine before, some connection. Oh my gosh, that would be great. We'd love to do that, let's get something going. And 4th, who else should I talk to? So we're asking, we're going out and finding out more from our community, what is needed and how, what is truly needed, what is truly wanted, and how we might be able to participate in bringing the good news in all sorts of ways to them in that fashion. I've got I've got another lovely party gift for you today. I've got a little slip of paper that's got those 4 questions so that you can just keep them in your billfold or put them on your refrigerator or whatever, and commit them to memory so that if you have the opportunity to, when you're out in the community, to learn about someone or some group here or in Desert Hot Springs where we're starting to do some work or wherever you may be, take notes, write down, let me know, let the church council know. Let's start being out and learning about who's around us so that we can indeed be the Christ, the real meaningful, loving, empowering, feeding Christ that we are called to be, that is a really joyful experience once we hit the right project. And so that we can be a church that's energized and out there, not a church, not that we are, but we just don't ever want to risk being a church of maroons, right? In fact, wouldn't it be great if we could know ourselves? We're the church where the only maroon you'll ever find is in our carpet. Thanks be to God.